Anyway, my next guest has got a chicken on his CD cover. It's a new comedy CD, the very best of Paul Morrissey, and it's available from his website. Please welcome back to the show, chicken lover Paul Morrissey.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Alley-Oop Podcast. I'm your host, Paul Morrissey. Welcome to part 2 with W Earl Brown. This was exciting. Earl invited me over to his house, and he actually had to run a quick errand, and then came back and we talked a lot more about Deadwood, about writing on the show, because Earl was actually asked to join the writing staff, I think the second season, by David Milch, who is known in the TV circles as like a writing genius. He's pretty amazing. So Earl got to work with him directly in writing the episodes, and talks a lot about the process, the language, all that kind of stuff, all the inside dirt about Deadwood coming up in the next hour, and also how Earl got his buddy, singer Steve Earle, on the show. And we talk about what it's like to get a movie produced and written in Hollywood. Earl did his own movie, Bloodworth, starring Kris Kristofferson, Val Kilmer, Hilary Duff, and just talks about how that process almost killed him, because it is a lot of pressure to raise money, produce a movie, write it, get it staffed, all that kind of stuff. So if you're interested in writing or producing or any of that kind of stuff, it's a pretty cool insight about that. And also we get into more comedy. We talk about Louis C.K., Richard Pryor. We also get into more of Earl's movies. We talk about There's Something About Mary, his character Warren, and working with the Farrelly Brothers and how all that came about, which is a pretty amazing story, how Earl ended up with the part of Warren on There's Something About Mary. And also, we talk about Paul Thomas Anderson. Earl was in the movie The Master, and one of the great scenes in the movie was this fist fight that Earl had with Joaquin Phoenix. And Earl describes the whole thing and how it was an actual fight. I mean, there's some intense pressure in that scene. Like, the tension is just amazing. So we talk about that. And we also get into Murray State Sports, which is where Earl went to college. And they have a really good basketball team. Actually had a nice run to the tournament last year, but this year it did not quite make it. Sorry about that, Earl. But it was great talking to him. Super interesting guy, has a lot of great stories, has worked with a lot of great people, and been involved with a ton of cool stuff. So hope you enjoy it. A couple quick plugs. We are... oops, a little static there. We are an independent podcast. Make no bones about it. It's just me putting this stuff together. I have a couple people helping me out, but this is a bare bones operation. So if you do want to donate a couple bucks to say thank you, or if you enjoy the episodes, you can go to alleyooppodcast.com. So ALLEYOOPPODCAST.com and donate a buck or two. I'll make sure that I send you guys something, either a CD or a download or something, just for supporting the podcast. I really appreciate that. And we do have sponsors now. So if you do any shopping at all at Amazon.com, make sure you go to alleyooppodcast.com first, click on Amazon on our page, and then buy whatever you want. It doesn't cost you anything, but we actually get a few bucks for referring to you and get a certain percentage of what you spend. So that's a pretty cool way to give back if you're going to buy something on Amazon anyway. So go to alleyooppodcast.com when you do that. Also, there's another... we got a couple other advertisers. We have Uber, which if you use taxis or car services, you travel for your job a lot, it's a great thing. You can download the app, and actually they have a deal where they're really supporting us. You get $20 free. So if you go to uber.com, sign up, and put in the code word Paul has a website, you get $20 free to use on Uber. It's basically a taxi service that is controlled by your app. So if you get the Uber app, click Pick Me Up. The closest Uber car will pick you up. They have town cars and car services affiliated with them, so they'll pick you up pretty quickly. It'll even tell you how long it takes. I used this at the Sundance Film Festival. It was awesome. You just hit, you can actually see the cars kind of graphicking. It's almost like a video game. You just hit Pick Me Up, and then it says it's 8 minutes away or whatever it is, and you know exactly when it's going to pick you up. You don't have to tip the driver or anything. Everything's included in the fee. Just gets charged right to your credit card, so there's nothing to worry about. So go to Uber.com, sign up using Paul Has a Website. And also, if you do the traveling as well, go to Hotels.com, banner on the Alley podcast site, and you get a deal there, and you give it back to the podcast. So those are 3 easy ways to help support me. You can also go to my other website, paulhasawebsite.com, buy my CD, Paul Morrissey's Back, which was released by Rooftop Comedy. And, yeah, that's about it. So hope you enjoy the episode. We got a lot of great ones coming up. Make sure you tell your friends and just like. Anytime you see anything I post online, just hit like or subscribe or anything. You have no idea how much good that does, especially being an independent podcast. It really it makes people notice, and it builds the momentum. And I just want as many people as possible to be able to hear this stuff, because I think I got a lot of great guests, and they're really good episodes. So hope you enjoy it. We'll start off with the scene from Deadwood. This is, this guy's awesome. Timothy Oliphant is awesome. He's in Justified. I think people will know him now, but he played Sheriff Bullock in Deadwood, and this is a scene between Earle, who plays Dan Dority, the Al Sweargent's right-hand thug, and Bullock confronting him, or actually discussing whether somebody's going to die. So here it is. Hope you enjoy the episode.
Take turns like white men.
I don't care if the whole U.S. cavalry walks in here. You don't want to pour another drink. You just want to listen to me, because if the man doesn't die whose face I just broke, he's going to go to New York City and tell Brom Garrett's people it breaks his heart to say so, but his daughter had their son murdered. He'll tell them. Knowing how he does, they won't want their son's rightful property in the hands of the woman who killed him. He'll swear to what he heard from her own lips, and those society people in New York City, who live with their heads up their asses anyway, will believe him. And whoever they send out here may take up to 15 minutes before they decide, being you were involved in the transaction first to last, it must have been you and your boss she hired to push her idiot husband off the cliff. Of course, they'll be wrong about Mrs. Garrett, but they'll be right as rain about you two cocksuckers. You tell them all that upstairs.
If he don't die.
If he don't die. I don't think I killed him.
Just so I understand. If he don't die, you're saying the man's luck don't have to hold out. Now that's the message you want me to take upstairs.
I don't swim in that shit.
You ought to pin that on your chest. You're hypocrite enough to wear it.
You just tell him.
Hey, we were just talking about, we were covering some Deadwood ground. And so, yeah, that was one of the questions I was going to ask you about. So I loved the show, and then as soon as I found out all the other kind of intricacies about the writing process, like that David Milch has this crazy process, and it's written in iambic pentameter. Mm-hmm. And I try to explain that to people. What's the best way that you can explain that? It's basically like Shakespearean.
Shakespeare wrote almost all of his stuff's in iambic pentameter. Sometimes Shakespeare, with his commoner characters, it would be in prose. Mm-hmm. But I guess in musical terms, it's like 2 measures of 5/4 time.
Right.
It's 10 beats per line, mm-hmm. with an alternating emphasis. Da 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 da
right.
da 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 da. So it's just a rhythm of the way the words are put together,
mm-hmm. and it lends itself to shorter words too, right? Or longer ones.
It's syllables mm-hmm. per line, so 10 syllables per line. So that's the way. That's the way it goes.
So, but why?
We never talked about it. It was never ever spoken. He never brought up the fact that, this is meter. You were just given. And if you look at Shakespeare, it's written in those meters. With David's, it was just written as if, regular. So it's not like we had a score sheet to sit there and follow.
Well, why was that a choice, or when did that come to your attention?
I've always known. I did a guest star on NYPD Blue when he was still running it.
Okay.
I had just finished this movie, Dancing at Blue Iguana, which was an improv film.
Oh, right.
Like, we improvised that whole movie.
Mm-hmm.
And so within like a week after me finishing Iguana, I'm guest starring on NYPD Blue. And a line was, good, because I think I might be looking for a new job.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, good, because I think I'm going to be looking for a new job. The script supervisor comes over to me and she goes, Earl, it's might, not gonna. There's an extra syllable. It's might.
Mm-hmm.
And then she goes, and also you're missing the comma. You're not playing the comma in this line. So that's when I realized this language is really, really precise.
Yeah.
And I always knew that in my PD Blue, there was a weird, the cadence of the words.
I never noticed that.
Well, it's that. Well, with Deadwood, because of the flowery language, David's point was, he said anybody in that time period that was learned was taught in Victorian literature, which was a very flowery prose. The only thing we have is the written record of the time, which was a very flowery way of expressing themselves. There are no recordings of how they actually spoke. So coupling that with the first law that was passed in Deadwood was outlawing cursing. It actually split North Deadwood and South Deadwood. North Deadwood, no cursing and no spitting on the sidewalk. South Deadwood was Sodom and Gomorrah.
Yeah.
And as David said, if the first law in a place that's got 10,000 people, it's averaging 600 murders a year, and the first law they put on the books is outlawing cussing, they got to be some cussing cocksuckers.
Yeah.
So that was how that came about.
And what about the that each episode was like a day?
The idea was that the initial idea is every episode would be a day and we would not jump time. So basically we would have 12 episodes and it would essentially be 2 weeks in a time frame. The initial idea was that the first one would be 1876 when the town first started to bloom, and then we would go to 1877, and then we would go, so every year would be 2 weeks within a span of time of the Deadwood, of the town itself.
Right.
Ended up with his story. We did time jump a bit after the end of season 1 into 2.
Right.
But season 2 went right directly, like season 3 opens up right when season 2 ends.
Yeah.
So that was the way he told his story. And he was offered movies to wrap it up, 2 movies to tie up the story. And as David said, that's not the way we tell our story. It's not the way, and to try to truncate all of this time, the things that actually happened, and squeeze them together. And he refused to do it.
Yeah. It's basically like trying to tie it up in 3 episodes to do 2 movies almost, right?
Yeah. If he had played his cards differently, it was a bunch of corporate politics, and it was about money and the bottom line. A lot of things came into play. In retrospect, if David had played his hand differently, it might have survived. But, that's the way it happens.
Yeah.
And David, make no mistake whatsoever, the alpha and the omega of the success of that show is David Milch.
Right. And so, did you officially become like on the staff of the writing by the 3rd season, or was that something you were helping with?
When Ricky Jay had that position in the first season, Ricky was on the writing staff.
Right.
What happened in the pilot, I think this was the seed that eventually blossomed. In the pilot, I improvised the line. It just came out huge no-no. But it was when Bullock, they first pull into town. I'm giving them a place to set up their tent. And I said, rent's $10 a week, payable every week to Mr. Swearingen at the gym. And Bullock says, where will I find the gym? I think it was, I just turned and walked away. In one take, I went, no, it was written as, you'll find it. And then Dority leaves. I said, you'll find it. Everybody does.
Oh, right.
So, cut, we finished, and cut. David comes walking over to me, and he says, well, guess I'm going to have to call WGA. I said, what? He goes, yeah, get an adjudication over who wrote this fucking thing, me or you. So he goes, what did you say? And you'll find it everybody does. You can see him kind of counting in his head. He calls a script supervisor over and he goes, add this. Tell her what you said. Don't quote me on this because I'll fucking deny it. That phrase works. It works. So as the season progressed, one day out of the blue, I quickly realized David is collaborative. He's completely open. Mm-hmm. But you don't change things.
Right.
If in rehearsals, because he was there at every rehearsal, he directed the actors in every scene. A director could not prep a script in a proper way, or nor could an actor, because you didn't have a script. Mm-hmm. You know, it was living in David's head.
Yeah.
So I realized if something you could say, how about how about you say it this way? Sometimes it would pass muster, and sometimes it wouldn't.
Well, that's the thing. You're earning the trust. I mean, that's how,
completely.
You know, when I'm doing stand-up, like Jim Gaffigan and all those guys, when you give them tags, you want to make sure that it's something that's good, and then you can build up towards,
But it's also, I got the lecture from him toward the end, midway through, three-quarters way through the first season. He comes up to me, and out of the blue, he goes, do you write? I said, yes. He goes, you've written stuff. I said, yeah. Mm-hmm. He goes, all right, I have something I want you to read. So he gives me his series of lectures from Yale. It was like a 5-hour lecture on his theory of writing.
Okay.
Transcribed exactly the way he speaks. I think you can find it on the internet, like the film of it, but with all the ahs and the ums and vocalized pauses. So I read it in a few days, and he comes up to me and he says, you read that thing? I said, yeah. He goes, all right, it's my turn. Give me something you've done. So I gave him the short story. He read it overnight. He comes back the next morning and he says, yeah, that's pretty good. You ever written a script? And I had just written the first draft of what became Bloodworth. Mm-hmm. I said, I got a book adaptation. I'd actually kind of like your feedback. So I gave him the Provinces of Night script. Mm-hmm. Then like 2 or 3 days later, he comes up to me and he says, I want you to come to our trailer next season. I want you to come over to the writing trailer. It intimidated the hell out of me.
Yeah.
And it was at that breakfast between him and Steve that I was talking about earlier. When Steve and I left, we got back in my truck. Steve goes, didn't you say he offered you a chance to write with him? Mm-hmm. I said, yeah. He goes, you ain't going to take it? And I had all excuses. Honestly, I was intimidated.
Yeah.
But I had excuses as to why I wasn't sure. And Steve goes, well, you're a goddamn idiot. I said, what? He goes, you're a goddamn idiot. That's a writer's writer, man. You don't run into people like that very often in life. And that one's in Hollywood.
Yeah.
Man, get off your high horse. You might learn something. So when the second season rolled around, day one, I went up and said, I want to take you up on that offer. So that's how I got there. And twice I got the series of lectures, one-on-one. Mm-hmm. He said, come to my trailer. I want to talk to you. So for like an hour, he would talk about his writing. And Rodney Crowell has said the exact same thing about songwriting and the exact same thing. You know when you're in the zone? Shit you haven't prepared. Mm-hmm. You're on stage and you're in that moment.
Right.
And shit's just coming to you. You know. And that's what David, he said, stories have a way of telling themselves. You are a vessel. Mm-hmm. What you do is set your ego aside. Listen. Listen to everything around you, and that story will tell you how it wants to be told. Mm-hmm. And that's what makes it honest. It makes it alive. I also think, knowing David, that's also the gambler in him that loves waiting to the last second.
Right.
But he really believes how he is subconsciously led. Like there's things in the show like Richardson, E.B.'s whipping boy with the horns. Ralph Richardson is the guy's name. He was a background guy. And in one take, he was actually a pretty good actor. Mm-hmm. He responded naturally to something because he had that hangdog look.
Yeah.
Milch walks up to him and he goes, who are you? No. Who are you in this town? Come up with an idea of who you are. How'd you get here? Write about 2 or 3 pages. Mm-hmm. Now, I don't know what Ralph wrote. I never saw it. But that's how he incorporated. He loved the idea of E.B., which is essentially, Shakespeare, Lear's fool. Mm-hmm. Loved the fool having a whipping boy. So
right.
That's how. And with David's mind, his unconscious led him to this person and led him, and it became an element of the show.
Yeah.
So, that's what we were talking about earlier, like money and the fame, and it removes an artist from what really mattered, what made them special to begin with. That's what you lose touch with.
Right.
When you lose touch with the muse and that,
or you feel that you can do it all the time. I was just, I think I was watching something on Netflix about screenwriting, and they're just talking about like the guys that sell their first 2 screenplays. They're like, I thought this was how it was always going to be. And then there's the guys that are like, I wrote 43 before I sold my first screenplay.
And then the big trap you fall into is repeating yourself, because they want to hire you. After Something About Mary, I was offered a couple of retarded funny guy parts, and I turned them down.
Yeah.
Because I didn't want to be known as that guy.
Well, I mean, and also people do it as, you know, we talk about artists. I mean, that's one thing I admire about you is that you do a lot of different things, because I think once you become good at the writing part of it, I think you can do a lot of different things. Whereas like in stand-up, a lot of people try to stay in the stand-up thing, and you always run into somebody that's like, well, I've been doing this for 12 years and nothing's happened. I was like, well, do you want to be doing something else? Or you're talking like you're working at an office or something like that. Like, this is the fun part. If you're not having fun yet, I mean, you're not doing this in order to get something else. This is it. So you might get a TV show, you might get to do stand-up on TV, but overall, this is your thing, that you get to think of something at 3 a.m. and you say it the next night, and people laugh at it.
Yeah.
So
but it's that exchange. I mean, you know what it's like live. And that's what, when I got to play with the band, you don't get that in TV and movies. Now, it's cool as hell. When Mary was running in the theaters, I would slip into theaters and watch with the audience.
Oh, that's great.
Like, I'd watch another movie, but I'd slip in the back. And I would love to watch an audience watch and try to gauge, you know, try to dissect what's funny. How did this work? Was that in editing? Was that in the scene? You know, and the biggest one was, we always got a huge laugh when the scene where Tucker, the pizza delivery guy, when he's discovered. Because when he dropped the keys, that was all Lee improvised that. Yeah. That whole trying to... People were uncomfortable laughing at that. Because this is a guy with a handicap. Right. You know, and not... When you discover the pizza, the big release, the big laugh, is the physical shtick he had done 20 minutes earlier. Right. Because then they felt comfortable with laughing.
Yeah, I mean, I always think that movies is so tough. I mean, the one guy that has a great mix of, I mean, but you'll still get things about like, oh, they're screening, they're just doing a screening of that Steve Carell, Jim Carrey magician movie.
Burt Wonderstone.
And they're trying, you know, they'll play a longer version of that to try to get the laughs. I mean, there's still ways that they try to prepare themselves, but I mean, writing a book or a movie and not getting any feedback like natural, I mean, I feel lucky. And David Sedaris is the only guy that gets to do that. Like, he does, I don't know if you've ever seen him live, but he does readings. He lives in Europe, and he'll come here with 4 new stories. And if you see him he'll do 30 days in a row, different cities. It doesn't matter where. He'll go to Omaha, to New York, to California. He'll just go every day, reads the same 4 stories, and then he'll do like some diary things at the end or whatever in the very beginning. But by the end of the 30 days, he's got all those stories edited and ready for the book. So he does that twice a year.
So that's his audio book.
Yeah.
See, I just know him as a writer from books.
But it's also, it's a tested, you know, if I write a short story and I've never read it out loud or gotten a reaction from it, how do I even know? And so he has all these stories that are already tested by the time they're in a book. So it's just such a great way to be able to test the feedback and know, oh, this is working, this isn't, or, you know.
But they're still alive, you know, but it all depends on the style of writing. I mean, some things don't really lend themselves to
exactly,
loud, but can be incredibly evocative when you're just reading them to yourself. Right. Some things, the language is so rich that it does jump off the page. You can speak it.
Right. Like you were talking about Carlin. I mean, that's the reason he was writing all those books, because he's just like, some stuff just isn't. I know it's funny, but it's lends itself to being on the page instead of being spoken. So
you know, I'm always writing notes or ideas and shit happening, and there's stuff everywhere. And there's some things that, like, you know, I got a bit that'd be a great stand-up bit. Yeah, it's just there's no way to put it. The only way it's gonna work is on stage. There's nothing. You can't take that story and put it in a movie or a short story. It's not gonna be funny. But vice versa. There's funny stuff, you know, that would only work written and wouldn't work.
Right. I mean, that's what Woody Allen's whole thing. He just has those notes everywhere, and he's like, I'll never live long enough to make all the movies that are in these notes and in my head. And I'm like, wow. Because, you know, you see some of the people that are watch, like, I think it was Harper Lee. I watched the documentary about her, and it was just like, that was her first book To Kill a Mockingbird,
First
and then
book, and she
never
quit.
wrote anything again.
Yeah.
So it's like some people, that's all they have to say, or that maybe that's the one story that they can tell.
Yeah. Or all of the other stuff that happens around them is too much to deal with, which I think was probably her case.
A little bit. I didn't.
Her and Truman, I mean, they were childhood buddies.
Yeah, I didn't.
Truman was completely comfortable with who he was.
Right.
And
But she was all, yeah, that was the interesting thing that I didn't know was, she was like, I don't think you have to be on TV and at Studio 54 for people to want to read your book. Mm-hmm. So I guess she was a little more calculated than just scared. I mean, I always thought she just tried to disappear. But they're like, no, she's lived a long life and, she
just did not want that kind of
didn't want to do any interviews, didn't want to do...
Well, like Salinger,
Yeah.
He just I heard he wrote.
Like letters to like some girl, right? Like
she wrote him. She was like a student. He had a long affair with her,
right?
And then she writes a tell-all. Years after they broke up.
I always think there's there's always something hidden. They're up to something. They're not just hiding out and doing nothing for 30 years.
But it's all it's that zone of creativity for me. And that was the thing. I don't know. We touched on it when we were recording, but when I went back to Cowboy Jack Clement's tribute last week in Nashville. And Jack was the original engineer at Sun Records. And there is a fascinating, I've got it here, it's a documentary about Jack called Shakespeare Was a Big George Jones Fan. And Jack it's all about creativity. At one point, Jack owned half of Nashville. Music studios, and he was the guy. He produced Jerry Lee Lewis. Charlie Pride was his act. So country music in the 60s, Johnny Cash was his best friend. All of the cool people, the poets and the pickers, and they hung out at Jack's. The Cowboy Arms Hotel and Recording Spa. And that was it was his house. The basement was a workshop. I was never over there weren't somebody building ukuleles or something in the basement. Upstairs was a recording studio. Countless classic country records were cut there. He was big into film. He loved doing home movies. And then he'd be sitting there in his office, and there's just this swirl of activity around him. And Jack, his whole life fed on that creativity. He surrounded himself with those kind of people.
Yeah.
Jack's dying. Jack has terminal cancer. And Jack decided that, he said, it's been a good 81 years. Let's go out the way we lived it. Fearless. So it was his funeral.
Oh, wow.
And the show was Emmylou Harris, Rodney Crowell, and Kris Kristofferson, and John Prine, John Hyatt, Charlie Pride, Dan Arbach, the Black Keys, Amos Lee, Mary Gauthier. I got to get up and read part of his autobiography that was never published because Jack had all sorts of unfinished projects. I've never few times have I ever felt the spirit fill a room like that that night.
Wow.
And they didn't know if his health is fading, didn't know if he would be able to perform because he was always the guy jumping up on stage with people playing.
Right.
He got up there and he did 4 songs, and it was extraordinary. And I thought, I hope when my time comes that I got the balls to throw my own funeral, and perform at my own funeral. And again, the love that came out from everybody in that room. Jack's whole life is built on creative expression. Be yourself, man. You want to get up and dance around the room? Put on music and put that glass of water on your head. He was an Arthur Murray dance instructor when he was younger.
Oh, yeah.
And dance. You want to sing a song? Sing a song.
Yeah.
You want to tell a joke? So I just feed on that.
Yeah.
And to be included, just as on a personal level, to be included in that was just, a pinch me moment.
Right,
but to be a part of it in the room of all these people that's why I do this.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing. And I'm also fascinated by the ending. You know what I mean? Like, not necessarily like going out with a blaze of glory, but like, how do these people, like the Carlin thing? That's the way he would have wanted gone out. The last special, fantastic job. Then a few days later, and it almost seems like these people are saving. Did he pass away?
No, he's still with us.
Yeah.
Yeah, this was last Wednesday night.
He just wanted this to be like the last.
He does radio shows on Sirius, the Cowboy Jack Clement show.
Oh, okay.
On Outlaw Country on Saturdays. He's done one since we had the thing.
Right. Yeah, like the Warren Zevon thing too. He, he was doing
Enjoy every sandwich.
Yeah, so that's awesome. The one other thing I was going to ask you. I wanted to talk about Bloodworth a little bit. That's your movie that you wrote and produced, and so we've got all the basic. We've got our country music element. We've got our cowboy element, I guess. Where did that story come from? And that
I read that book a few years after it published. My wife interviewed the author for this project she was working on.
Oh, okay.
William was a huge music nut.
Mm-hmm.
And we just struck up a friendship, and I loved that book.
Yeah.
When I was in Nashville doing Steve Earle's play in 2002, when I got the pilot of Deadwood that we talked about earlier, it was all the same time. I was reading. I thought it was Rolling Stone, but it must have been Spin. But it was one of the final interviews that Cash ever gave.
Mm-hmm.
And my wife had Nashville Living or whatever their local magazine is. She was reading it. Out of the corner of my eye on the airplane, I noticed there's a review of Provinces of Night. Now, that book struck a chord with me when I first read it. I mentioned Salinger earlier. I read Catcher in the Rye right about my first year at grad school, but I was still college age.
Right.
So many guys my age, that was a coming of age book for. I just thought he was an arrogant jerk, the character. But when I read Provinces of Night, that was my Holden Caulfield, because that's how I saw the world at that age.
Okay.
I wasn't that cynical, removed, I'm smarter than. But so I see this review of the book, and I said to my wife, I said, that's peculiar. That book's like 2 years old. He's essentially a local author, and they're just getting around to reviewing his book. The very next question asked of Johnny Cash was, is there anything you have left to do in this life?
Mm-hmm.
John said, I would love to do one more movie. If my health held up and I was physically able to, I'd like to do one more film. The lead character in that, it's the kid, but then the grandfather is a 70-year-old dying musician.
Yeah.
John, 70-year-old dying musician. That was when, the fates are... So the director, Shane Taylor, who worked at ESPN for years.
Oh, yeah?
He was a producer at ESPN. The guy, he played at Murray State and then worked for ESPN. He had made an independent film in my hometown. That's how we met. And he made this little no-budget film that he kept inviting me to go see, and I would avoid because I thought, it's pretty much, there's only a couple of professional actors in it, mostly local people, shot on HD, which back then HD was looked down upon.
Right.
I finally saw it, and it blew me away at how damn good it was.
Oh, wow.
So I gave him Provinces of Night. And I think he was flying, he flew all the time for ESPN.
Mm-hmm.
He read it on a flight. He read the first third of it. He called me from the airport when he landed. He goes, can we get this book? So that's where we got the rights. And then John, of course, I found out through mutual friends his health was too far gone.
Yeah.
Kris Kristofferson's the greatest musician. He's a great actor.
Mm-hmm.
And so Kris is, of all that out, definitely the best actor.
Right.
So in that first incarnation, we wanted Kris, but he wasn't available because he just made his This Old Road record, and he was going to tour for a year promoting that album. Then we lost our money. And in the interim, somewhere, Kris's daughter read our script. She, in turn, told him, you need to read this one.
Mm-hmm.
So his agent started calling us. Whatever happened to that project? Where is it?
Mm-hmm.
So his interest kind of got the ball rolling again. And then Shane had met Hillary Duff at the Kentucky Derby.
Yeah.
And at one point, I'm friends with Toby Keith, and he's a big movie nut.
Mm-hmm.
He wanted to read it. So at one point, he was going to play a supporting role in the thing.
Mm-hmm.
So all of that.
You got Dwight Yoakam, too, right?
Yeah. We ended up with Dwight down the road.
Mm-hmm.
But that's what got the ball rolling.
Yeah,
we always wanted one of the sons to be a musician because the character in the movie is not a musician per se.
Right.
But just this off-screen idea that, it's Kris of one generation and then the next.
Mm-hmm.
And then Dwight. Dwight's a wonderful actor. His agent, was it Hillary or somebody else? He handled a client that was already on the film, and then he started pushing Dwight. And we're like, yeah, sure.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how it all happened.
That's amazing. And so what was that the first script that you kind of produced and wrote?
It was the first movie, and we had another partner. That's a long and complicated story. but it had already fallen apart once. And Shane and I were left with no choice. We have to grab the reins, or this wagon's going over the cliff.
Right.
So we ended up producing it ourselves. Hands down, the most stressful thing I've ever done.
Yeah.
I got sick. I mean, I couldn't sleep. And then after the movie was over, I was sick for a while.
Oh, man.
Just because, I like being irresponsible. And with that, you have to be responsible.
Yeah.
You're in charge.
It's like that, what is it, Heart of Darkness? The
Oh, yeah.
Apocalypse Now documentary where, like, Coppola's about to, he's like, I think I'm going to die doing this, but...
Marty's had a heart attack? No, Marty is not dead. Marty is not dead. Marty is not dead unless I say he's dead. Don't you tell me that. Don't you tell me.
Yeah, I mean, I did the one, I wanted to write and, like, produce a short film. Like, I didn't want to get involved with, like, this, I didn't want it to be a sketch or a YouTube thing or something like this. This is a couple years ago, 2007. So I did, there's this guy, Eddie Pepitone, who's in the comedy community. Everyone is like, when is this guy going to be famous? They actually did a documentary, and it was at Sundance this year. It's called The Bitter Buddha. And he's just such a funny guy and just kind of a loud, obnoxious New York kind of guy. And so I just had him as a marriage counselor, people going in, oh, he doesn't listen to me. Oh, he hasn't gambled away the mortgage or shot a gun through the ceiling, all that kind of stuff. And so it got into a film festival, the Two Rivers Film Festival, and one of the movie that premiered was Paul Schrader's movie starring Val Kilmer, I think, and Woody Harrelson. And so Val was in your movie too, yeah. So how did he, from Tombstone, that's one of the coolest all-time roles, I think. Larry Miller had a great story about meeting Val Kilmer somewhere, and he was like, hey, I really want to know how you came up with the accent for Doc
Holliday.
Yeah, Doc Holliday, and it was one of those funny things. It was more of a show business story because Larry Miller was kind of nervous to meet him, which I thought was kind of funny. But he could tell, like, he asked this question, and it really, Val really thought about it. He's like, oh, I'm so glad that you asked me that. And Larry's like, and for the next 5 minutes, I have no idea what he said. He goes, I have no idea what he told me. I just know that he was interested in the question, and then I didn't end up getting my answer.
Val is, he is incredibly talented.
Yeah.
He is extremely eccentric. Let's just leave it at that.
Yeah, okay. Well, we'll go to the Farrelly Brothers movie. Was that your first, like, well, that's the funny thing is, does anybody recognize you from that, or is it? That's so.
Actually, one of the cool moments was the movie was still in theaters, and I got hired to do a horror movie, Lost Souls, that Janusz Kaminski was doing. Janusz was he loved Something About Mary. So we're shooting this scene in a church downtown in L.A., and I had to park with the extras because there was no parking by our trailers. So we had like 300 extras. We had this church full of people. And we spent all day shooting me through the eye. They shoot a few characters, but you find out I'm in league with the devil, and Winona Ryder and Ben Chaplin put a bullet through my eye. So we're in the van afterwards, driving. I've changed, and I'm driving back to the parking lot. It's full of extras. And there's this girl sitting right next to me. She's like 22, cute as a button. Just moved out to Hollywood. She's going to make it really big in the pictures, And she and this guy who's about her age, and he just moved out here, and and they were talking, about Something About Mary. Oh my God, that's the funniest movie I've ever seen. Oh my God, this scene. Oh, and the brother. Oh my God, the brother. So I'm sitting right next to her, right? And I go, my ego takes over, and I said, "Oh, you like that movie?" She turns to me and goes, "Oh yes, that's the funniest movie I've ever seen. Have you seen it?" I said, yeah, I am Warren. You're talking about Warren. I'm Warren. She gives me this look like I just farted in church. Kind of cocks her head. Literally turned her back on me. My first thought was, "What the fuck? You just saw me up in for all day long being shot." And then I thought, no, that's kind of cool actually. She thinks I'm lying just to scare.
Right.
And so...
Or making fun of a retarded guy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I mean, funny, I had a guy on a podcast, this very funny comic, Rich Brown, and he does a lot of work with the scripts with those guys. And actually, the night that you saw me at Flappers, there's a guy, Jimmy Dore. I don't know if
right before you.
Yeah.
Right.
Or I think he was doing the political show. I can't remember. But Jimmy and Rich were friends, and one of Jimmy's buddies, Jackie Flynn, was in a bunch of Farrelly Brothers movies. And so they're out. Jimmy and Jackie were roommates, I think, at that point. And Rich has these great one-line, like, just really kind of dirty jokes, like just great stuff that you almost like bar jokes that you would recite to people. You know, like the one joke is, you know, I used to wrestle in high school. I wasn't very good. After I came, I would just give up and get pinned. He said my dad hated Saturdays, you know. And David Spade actually quoted that joke in like Playboy or something. It's like, you see a guy that has a really great joke, and you know, so people have quoted that joke before, and he just has like 4 or 5 of these really funny kind of, you know, dirty jokes, you know. And so Jimmy's one of those guys, whenever he's meeting somebody or whatever, he'll just tell him a couple of jokes. And so Peter Farrelly's out having a couple of beers, and he tells him like that one and a couple other jokes, and he's just like, who is this guy? And at that time, Rich had this great idea. He'd been doing comedy for a long time, but he was going to sell copiers for a year and then save enough money to move to Los Angeles. So was he out
of Boston? Was this the guy?
No, he's from Chicago.
Chicago.
And so off of Jimmy Dore telling Peter his jokes, Peter calls Rich. And every movie since Me, Myself, and Irene, he's helped right on the... He was actually, did you see Hall Pass?
Yes. I've seen them all, yeah.
Yeah, he's the guy with the world's smallest penis that gets out of that's Rich. They finally put him in like one of the... And he has like the prosthetic penis, and he was worried about looking too fat. I was like, we have the smallest penis in the world, don't you? You think you're going to get laid off this part? But I absolutely love those guys. So it must have been a huge thrill. Because how did it happen? I read something like were you in like a group with that Rob Moran guy that's in all? Okay. Who's always a creepy guy. I remember him from
Stanley the Evil Bowler.
Yeah.
Well, see, that's how two things had led me toward Mary. I was doing this miniseries for CBS called Bella Mafia. And it was really kind of overwritten and a little silly at points. Mm-hmm. Jennifer Tilly played my wife. And Jennifer and I basically made fun of the dialogue in our performance. And the director loved it because it gave a little bit of humor. So we kind of became the comic foil. Mm-hmm. This guy, Gary Yoshiba, is a camera assistant. And he had done all the Wes Craven films that I'd been on, which I'd done Scream at that point. Between takes, Gary's laughing. He goes, man, you're funny. I've never seen you do comedy. You're funny. You know, I'm doing this new Farrelly Brothers movie because Mark Irwin's who he just hired out on our gig as a side gig. Uh-huh. Mark was the DP on all of them. He'd done all the Farrelly movies. He goes, I'm doing this new comedy with the Farrellys. It's the funniest script I've ever seen in my life. It's called Something About Mary. You should look into it. Within days of that, I'm on the treadmill at my health club over at Bally's, and I'm on the treadmill next to Lynn Shay. And I just introduced myself because she'd been in 2 of the West movies that I was in. And we've never really met, worked together, so chatting, this, that, and the other. And she knew who I was from the West movies. And what are you doing now? She goes, you know Dumb and Dumber and Kingpin, those guys? I said, yeah. She goes, I'm doing this movie of theirs called Something About Mary. It's the funniest script I've ever read. So like in a couple of days' time, 2 people out of the blue have mentioned this project to me. So I called my manager, and my manager did not like broad comedy. That's not her thing. But I told her, I said, there's this script, 2 people. Well, she's a definite believer in Kismet, so she's going to track down the material. So she gets it for me, and I read it, laugh out loud. And there was just like the voice in my head, this role. Because Warren on the page is only like 10 lines maybe for the whole movie. But I just, like, the lights went off. This is it. So I'm trying to get an audition. At the time, I was with a smaller agency, and they didn't really have a relationship, my agent, with this casting director. And I'm part of this improv group at Amy Pizza's house. And Amy would host her husband, Kenny Williams, at the time, was part of Paul Sills' group in Door County. So he would go away and do improv with Paul up there on the farm for like weeks. So they start doing this improv thing at their house. It's all working actors.
Yeah.
You know, we weren't putting a show on. We weren't trying to start a theater company. We just get together and play. So Rob Moran's part of it. And I kept thinking, where do I know him? Most of us were Chicagoans. So I thought, where did I know him in Chicago? I'm rewatching Dumb and Dumber and Kingpin. I had him on VHS. He's Stanley the Evil Bowler.
Yeah.
So Sunday morning, I said, dude, I finally figured out where I know you. I kept thinking I knew you from Chicago. He goes, no, I wasn't in Chicago. I said, yeah, but you're Stanley the Evil Bowler in Kingpin. And he goes, yeah. He goes, I'm in Dumb and Dumber too. I said, what? He goes, I'm the bartender when Jim gets stood up on his date and he's spilling his guts. Fuck yeah, that is you. I said, so you've done both the Farrelly Brothers movies. I guess you know those guys. He goes, oh, I've known them since I was a kid. I'm from Rhode Island.
Yeah.
I said, oh, because, man, I'm trying my damnedest to get on this new one they're doing, something about Warren. Are you interested in playing Warren? Because they can't find anybody. I said, yeah, man, that's the role I want. He goes, well, I'm seeing Bobby tonight. So I got a call from Rob later that night. He goes, they're going to call your agent. They want to see you Tuesday. So I go, and there's a lot of people auditioning, and it's a room. There's like all the producers. There's like 8 or 9 people in the room. And and as I said, I played it straight. Then that callback, and I heard these guys, and they're in there, and they're trying to goof it. They're trying to make it fun. There are things.
Yeah.
There are, I mean, you know, you can take things on a page that are kind of dry. You can spin them, and you can make them funny. But something like that, the only way, I just instinctively knew the only way to make it work is to play it straight. So I walk in the room, and I had, in the interim between my first audition, between that and my second audition, I was out shopping with my wife, believe it or not, and I'm sitting there while she's trying on clothes. And there's this girl who's with her mom and sister, and she was mentally challenged. I just noticed her head moved like it was on a ball pivot, like when she would turn her head. And that's the only thing I think, I'm going to do that. I'm going to do that. So I added that by the time I went the second time. And it was just Pete and Bobby and the casting director, Rip Montgomery. We do it. We do the scenes, and I knew it wasn't what it was the first time. You know, wasn't properly calibrated. It was all right. And I kind of wanted to do it again. And Pete sees the look in my eye, and he goes, don't worry about it. We don't have to do it again. We want to hire you. Like, in the room.
Oh, great.
So I'm just playing it completely cool. Like, yeah, cool. You know, I've done a few things at this point. But I'm totally cool. And that was when I get in the elevators, when I did the, you know, that bit. Never done that since. I've never had that exhilaration since. Been kicked in the balls too many times since then. But yeah, it was Rob. I mean, had it not been for Rob, I probably wouldn't have gotten the shot.
Yeah, well, I guess that's another, you know, because everyone's always looking for, like, the answer. And always everyone tells you, just keep doing what you're doing, you know, and things will happen. And I think that's a testament to that. Like, it wasn't that you were given this; you were just doing all these other things and meeting. You know, if you're not in this improv group, working on your chops.
No, things do. You know, I think fate leads you certain ways. You know, like you got to be open, you got to listen. You know, you also have to be prepared. I naively thought you're in a big hit, something does well, special things come your way. No. You get what's negotiated for you is a sad fact. Yeah. And I was not prepared for the success of Mary. I mean, you've seen careers break, and it helped me. There's no doubt about that. It bolstered my career. But I've seen people become stars, like big stars, over things that weren't nearly as big as Mary. Yeah. And while, you know, it's a long way from me being the sole reason, but I was a big part of what made Mary special. Right. And I was not prepared to take advantage of that success. And kind of blindsided by it, honestly. Yeah. Because nobody thought that movie was going to... The studio, you know, it was a low-budget. Scream was the same way. Both of them broke from low-budget studio pictures that was basically B pictures. Yeah. And they both broke wide open. So yeah, it was a blessing. It was one of the greatest times I've had shooting. I'd love to work with those guys again, you know, but they've never brought me in again. Yeah. And we had a great time doing it. I auditioned for Three Stooges, which I was a stooge nut, you know, when I was a little kid. And then when I saw Will Sasso, like, Will's fucking perfect.
Yeah.
Looked like him. I liked Three Stooges a lot.
Well, they're doing Dumb and Dumber too.
That's what I heard.
Jump in on that one.
Well, I'd love to. If they're listening to this, they have my phone number.
Yeah.
It hasn't changed. At least my home number hasn't.
Well, what is like? I mean, you've done a lot of different things. You've gotten. I mean, when I look at your career, you're a super talented guy, and you've also gotten to learn and work with all these great guys. I mean, you also worked on The Master. What was that process like with?
Well, that was one. I get a call from my agent. Paul was big into Deadwood. He watched Deadwood. But I get a call from my agent. Cassandra, that casting director, I don't think she'd ever hired me, but she's brought me in on things. And my agent says, "Are you comfortable fighting?" Because that Deadwood fight's like the greatest filmed fight.
Yeah.
I said, "Yeah." He goes, "No, like really fighting. Like if somebody hits you, you hit somebody." I said, "Yeah, I've done it a few times." And he said, "Because Joaquin is they're wanting to make sure." I said, "Yeah." So I didn't even audition. And Cassandra hired me.
Oh, wow.
So I get there, and I expected Paul, because I'd watched Boogie Nights, one of my favorite films ever. And I love There Will Be Blood. I don't have Heart 8, but I had all of his other movies. They're here somewhere.
Magnolia?
What's that?
Magnolia?
Magnolia till the frogs, the biblical frog thing, just still kind of like, where'd that come from? But anyway, I expected this kind of intense auteur sort, real laid-back guy.
Yeah.
Friendly. And Joaquin comes over to me. He stays in character all the time. Now, he doesn't make an issue of it. Like, there are some of those you are not to call them by their name.
Right.
No, none of that. But he stays in that headspace.
Yeah.
And he walks over to me, and he's like inches from my face. He says, "When we do this, hit me. Just hit me. Literally hit me." I said, "Yeah, okay." Starts to walk away. He says, "No. What if I hit you? Are you cool? You cool?" I said, "Yeah, we're fine." So we go to rehearse a few hours later because they were doing some other stuff in the department store, the thing with the girls and the other portraits. So we get to this scene.
Yeah, and he's taking your picture, right?
Yeah.
Isn't it? Yeah.
And it escalates into this, the fight. If you notice, that's all in one. There's no cuts in that. Well, Paul had written the scene. There was more dialogue to that. Like, I'm a businessman sitting for my portrait, and I want to get a copy for my wife. And so we run through it, and Paul walks up and he says, I don't like this. This is not good," which is the first fucking thing you want to hear your director say when you
Right.
And he says, "It's the writing. My writing is too spot on. It's too obvious. Close the set." So set's closed. Everybody's off set. Me, him, and Joaquin. He goes, "Let's just play. Let's find it." So we just started rehearsing, and we did it for about an hour. We're futzing around and trying things, and then you see him kind of nodding. And he's bringing people back in, and I don't even know that there was a formal call to set, but we're extras and we're there, and we did it like 6 times. There's actually one take where I hit him. I mean, I tried to loosen my wrist. With the one that's on camera is kind of an open-handed slap with my left hand. But there was one where I hit him on the right, and it landed. My wrist landed right in his temple. Because when I hit him, I saw his eyeballs, look like in slot machines. But then I watch it. It's so tense, and I've watched it several times. I'm going to put it on my demo reel. How in the hell Paul got the tension in that scene?
Yeah.
He doesn't cut, and I mean, there was tension between us, but like like his frame, like he's wide on Joaquin. You never even see me for the beginning of it. Then he slightly pans in when we become a 2-shot, and then he pulls wider. But it's just, I think it's one of the standout scenes in the film.
Yeah, it is, and I didn't know it was you right away. But then I almost felt like somebody was going to get killed in that scene. Like, that's the amount of tension that was. Yeah. It felt like. Cause
I think it was so much bubbling up in him. And that was the way you always thought, this is a guy that's going to explode.
Yeah.
And take a gun into a crowded place.
Right.
Yeah. It's hot. I'm starting to sweat.
You need to shut up.
You need to move the gun.
You need to shut up.
You need to back off.
Sit down. I'm very sorry. I'm trying to get the landing right. You must understand. You want to get the landing right. Come on.
So, and that's been kind of a love it or hate it movie. I mean, some people really don't like it.
Well, people don't like his movies sometimes when they don't resolve anything. They just kind of leave.
This one especially, I mean, Boogie Nights, there's a plot. There's not a lot of plot in The Master. You know, is he going to publish his second book and leading toward that?
Right.
That's really about the only plot. And when the movie ends, nobody's learned anything. They're basically the same people at the end as they are at the beginning. But that's really kind of how life is. Tiger doesn't change his stripes.
Well, we talked about it because it was like, it's certainly all of these movies, whether you like them or they make you frustrated, it makes you think.
You can't forget it. It's like Kaufman is his stand-up.
So it's like, you know, this bullshit artist. What was it? Somebody was talking about. Oh yeah, the one thing where I was wondering if this was something that was kind of not contrived, but slid into the movie. Remember when they're making the next book? Mm-hmm. I forget what scene it is. They're like printing the book, and the guy reads the book. He reads the book, and he's like, "This is like a 300-page book that could have been written in 4 pages." And I almost think like that's him making fun of his own thing, because it's a little bit.
Well, you know, his wife's Maya Rudolph.
Yeah.
So, you know, he's with... Again, he was not as a person. He hosted a party. We had a rap party over at a bar near his house. Mm-hmm. Just an open bar, come have some drinks. And nicest dude. Yeah. Like, I hope I get to work with him again.
Yeah, I mean...
because that's... with something that I can spend real time with him. And
yeah, because you basically did the...
he's put on a pedestal as one of the great filmmakers of this generation. Mm-hmm. I love him, and I love Quentin. I was almost in Django. I met with Quentin.
Oh, man, that's perfect.
I love Django. And Quentin was big into Deadwood.
Well, that seems to be... because what's the guy's name? I can't get his... right off the bat. The guy in... didn't he get nominated for... is it Sessions or no?
Oh, John Hawkes.
Yeah.
The Sessions.
Like
that's a beautiful film. He did not. He got screwed, man.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
He was nominated for everything else except the Oscars. And I thought that film, because I'm his caretaker. I think that's a wonderful movie.
Yeah,
because it's so damn funny.
That's the only one I didn't see that of all the Oscar ones.
It's incredibly graphic.
Yeah,
I mean, its sexuality is like X-rated. It's very graphic.
I can handle it.
Yeah,
I've seen a few of those before. But I remember those guys from Eastbound and Down. They're like, we just saw him in Deadwood, and we thought we'll put him in our show because he plays Kenny Powers' brother.
Oh, John. Yeah. Yep.
Which he's pretty funny in that too. Even though he's playing it pretty straight.
Which I don't know. You know, now John is so damn busy. I called him. We used to play together, our bands. We did a monthly standing gig at the Knitting Factory. And because John went to Austin to be a musician.
Oh, okay.
He went to be a musician, not an actor. Just kind of fell into acting. Mm-hmm. But now, man, everybody wants him. After Winter's Bone, that kicked things to another level. So I called him a few weeks ago, but I haven't heard back from him. That's how I know he's swamped.
Yeah.
Because he's the nicest, genuine sweetheart of a person. Mm-hmm. But he's doing this, because I was up for it, this Elmore Leonard. It's the prequel of Jackie Brown. It's the Book of Elmore's. I can't remember the title. Mm-hmm. That some of those characters taking place prior. That's started this week. It's him and Jennifer Aniston.
Oh, okay. All right, yeah. I mean, I saw Django, and that's what I was almost thinking. I'm like, I'm sure I'm going to see Earl in this somewhere.
Well, I met with Quentin.
Yeah.
And we talked for a long time. I actually auditioned for Pulp Fiction because I didn't bring it up because he didn't remember.
Oh, really?
It was down between me and Dwayne Whitaker that played Maynard, the ass-raping hillbilly.
Mm-hmm.
It was Peter Green,
Oh, right.
Zed,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
Maynard. I just moved out here.
Oh,
and
wow.
that was one of my first auditions after moving.
Zed's
come out here,
dead.
I'd come out to test it out. And I had luck right off the bat. I got here February 1st of 93, 20 years ago.
Oh, wow.
I got a TV pilot within a couple of weeks because I'd kind of hit the glass ceiling in Chicago. So I went to New Orleans and did that, and then came back here, and I got back and I got a TV movie, like 4 scenes in a TV movie. I called my wife, and I went, we have to move. This is low-hanging fruit.
Yeah, yeah.
So she moved out here, and then it was 7 months, nothing. No thing. I had not seen Reservoir Dogs. So I'm given this script. The same casting director, Gary Zuckerbrod, that did the pilot, was working on this. He and Ronnie Yeskel, which Ronnie Yeskel just cast The Sessions. But they were doing Pulp Fiction together. And Gary brought me in. And the script's like 185 pages or something. I couldn't make heads or tails of it. You know how it jumps back and forward. And the next morning, my wife, she goes, well, what's this thing you're auditioning for today? And I said, I'm not really sure. She goes, what are you playing? I don't think you want to know, because it's the rape scene.
Right,
It's
yeah.
the getting the gimp and fuck him good.
So do you get the whole script? Did you read it?
Oh yeah.
What did you think? Is it like?
Well, I didn't know. I saw Reservoir Dogs after the audition,
Right.
and then I got it like completely.
Because that's what everyone says when you read it. It's so in his head that it's almost like a Tim Burton thing. Like he knows what he wants to do, but when you read it, you're just like, well, what is this?
See, I own every one of his films. I don't have Jackie Brown. Jackie Brown's the only one. I've watched it twice.
Oh, I love him too, but I think it was it Is it Metallica that he wanted them to play like one of their songs in the, what was it? It was the Kill Bill. I want to say Metallica. I'm almost positive.
No, I haven't heard this one.
Yeah, the drummer was on
Lars.
Howard Stern talking about it, I think. And they were huge fans of Quentin, and Quentin's like, hey, I want to use, I forget which one of their songs was like perfect for the movie. And so they give like Lars the script, and he's just like, it was just ridiculous. It was a karate movie about girls, and he's just like the most ridiculous. So we just didn't talk to him again about it, and then of course it ends up being like this huge hit.
I just read a pilot script that's got one of their songs written into it.
Oh, really?
That movie they did that's coming out in August.
Which
they
one?
have a movie that it was kept under wraps. They filmed it in Vancouver when I was up there doing Rogue. So I went. They did 3 shows. 2 were full concerts, and then the third was a start and stop. And they were filming them for this movie. I was at 2 of them.
Oh, okay. For a concert movie or like some other?
It's a concert movie that's got some kind of story wrapped around it.
Okay.
To do with kind of like a Hard Day's Night or something.
Okay. Because that
Again,
Some Kind of Monster
under
thing
wraps.
is like an
It's a
amazing
great documentary.
Yeah, I love all that stuff.
A little piece of trivia. Tim Oliphant's brother was working for Hetfield, and he was Hetfield's assistant.
Oh, really?
When Hetfield left, when they took the hiatus, his brother went on and did something else.
Oh, wow.
But yeah, his little brother was, I think brother
Yeah.
was working for Hetfield.
Oh,
Worked
man.
for a few years.
So what's like your ideal? That was the other one I was going to say. You should have been, or Coen Brothers. Have you ever auditioned for those guys?
I've been up for, yeah. I blew my chance at No Country for Old Men. Tim Nelson, because he's longtime buddies of theirs. I auditioned for the role Stephen Root played in No Country.
Okay.
We were in pre-production on Provinces of Night. So they hired Stephen, but they wanted me to come back for this other role. I never knew the dates conflicted with Provinces. Now, Tim, I think it was the role Woody played. Tim was supposed to play that role, the assassin that gets killed.
Right. Okay.
And then Tim had a movie, what was it? Leaves of Grass or whatever. That's the Whitman poem. No. He did that one. It was Ask the Dust was a film of his that he was going to be doing.
Okay.
So because I'd called him like, "Are you doing this thing?" We both lost the money. Neither one got either movie made, and so that's why neither of us were in No Country for Old Men.
Now, did you audition for that, or you didn't even get to that?
No, I auditioned for them for the role that Root played.
Yeah. So did you get the full script, or they just give you the scene, or?
Well, that one, I read the book the week it published. We all did on Deadwood. because we're big Cormac fans.
Right.
It's pretty much verbatim the book.
Okay.
So I don't remember if
I always wonder if their scripts are kind of...
I've got Oh Brother, Where Art Thou over here in this stack. It's one I kept.
Yeah, that's one of my favorites.
Me too.
Yeah, I love it.
And I was just watching Lebowski again in Nashville. I think Lebowski may have... Animal House was the comedy that made me want to be in movies.
Mm-hmm.
But Lebowski, I can watch that fucking movie. I've watched it 3 dozen times.
I mean, they have here's when people say all-time comedies. I don't know what exactly I mean, but I put Lebowski and
Raising Arizona.
Yeah, I mean that I don't know if it's Groundhog Day I also put in this weird place of
I auditioned for Groundhog Day.
Oh, really?
I was still in Chicago. The state policeman that stops him out with there's like a wreck on the freeway or something, like one scene.
Mm-hmm.
Tom Milanovich played it.
Well, that's Tobolowski's big...
I know.
I wonder if he gets a piece of Bing.com, because that was his big... Bing. But that one, and then... But comedy-wise, like straight-up comedy-wise, and I was even thinking about this the other night, I always think it's a blend of great actors, great script... And if you get the great director, it's almost better to have like I think Slapshot is one of the best comedies of all time, just because it's George Roy Hill, Paul Newman, and then the script is just drop dead funny. And that's I put Kingpin, like we were just talking about that the other day. I'm like, I think Kingpin might be one of the all time. I mean, something about Mary's up there, and Dumb and Dumber. They've done a lot of great comedies, but Kingpin, that mixture of like Bill Murray, Woody Harrelson, this kind of ridiculous story, but yet it still has some kind of heart to it. You know, it's like, wow, this is really good.
Well, it's the animal. I saw 3 movies my freshman year that made me want to be in movies.
Mm-hmm.
They all came out within a year. Star Wars right before I started high school. And then Animal House and Halloween, right around the end of my freshman year, that summer. Those are the movies that made me want to be in films, you know? And so Animal House has always held a special spot for me.
Yeah.
A few years ago when Bravo did their 100 funniest movies ever, I got invited to be a part of that talking head brigade.
Right.
And at first I was trepidatious about doing it. I said, oh, no, Peter Farrelly's doing it and such and such. And so, we got to vote on our top 20, and then they would pick in order, which ones do you want to talk about?
Mm-hmm.
So Mary was picked 3rd. I think Animal House was 1st. Caddyshack Caddyshack 2nd.
Mm-hmm. Caddyshack's up there. I
haven't watched it in a while. I've watched Animal House again. When my kid got old enough, she was not allowed to see R-rated movies.
Mm-hmm.
She's 14 now, 14 and a half. When she was 12, she was in a summer theater camp here. Mm-hmm. And she came home. Now, she had seen one R-rated film. I let her see Sleepy Hollow, which is not too bloody but so she came home. She says to her mom, we're sitting there at the table, she goes, well, today's discussion was about funny movies, and all of my classmates said that Something About Mary is one of the funniest movies they've ever seen. Mm-hmm. He's in it. You won't let me see it, and I don't think that's fair. So my wife says, all right, you can show her. So that weekend, Carrie was gone somewhere. So Saturday, we're going to watch. So we watched Something About Mary. She laughs her ass off. And I said, all right, well, it's R-rated. I got to show you the movie that made me want to be in movies. Uh-huh. So I show her Animal House. So me and my 12-year-old sharing the sofa, laughing. We finished that. She goes, I want to see Superbad. I want to see Superbad so much. So cool. So I pop in Superbad. I had forgotten how far out there that movie was. About 20 minutes into it, I can feel my ears getting red. She turns to me, she goes, Dad, I'm in middle school, okay? And then the movie was over, and she goes, so which one of those 2 were you when you were in high school? Mm-hmm. I said, really? I was kind of both of them. So, that was our day of R-rated comedy.
Well, my first influence was my parents took me to Revenge of the Nerds in the theater.
I just showed her that one recently. I don't think it holds up as well.
But you
go ahead.
That's like the most nudity I can remember in a movie.
Hep high.
And I was like, my mom's like, she's grabbing my hood. I had to be.
What'd you graduate?
Not even a teenager yet. Yeah, this is '85, so I must have been 11, 10 or 11. And so, yeah. But all those 85 movies, because I was just talking about how great, and that was no slight to Something About Mary. I think if Bill Murray played the Ben Stiller role, maybe, or Woody, maybe, but I just think, like, acting-wise in that, like, you were great. Stiller is still more of a comedic actor to me. He's not a guy that I put in with, like, you know, Academy Award-winning. Not in the Bill Murray or Belushi, for that matter. You know what I mean?
Well, really, if you go back and look at all of Belushi's stuff, which I have countless times, you know, there's a few of those. Continental Divide was not very good, and Neighbors was, of course, he hated
1941,
Neighbors. All the stories of shooting Neighbors, and that was, of course, that was Avildsen. I think after Rocky, he was hired to do that.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah,
But Nerds is one I just showed my kid not too long ago.
Mm-hmm.
I went on a kick. Mel Brooks, she just doesn't get.
Yeah.
I love Mel Brooks movies.
Well, even the Woody Allen stuff I didn't get until later, just because in New York, everybody loves Woody, and everyone imitates Woody, and you hear the jokes over and over again, and I'm just like, well, I've heard all this stuff, you know? And then when I started seeing all the new movies, like I love Vicky Cristina, Midnight in Paris, I thought was great.
Midnight in Paris was one of my favorite films of that year.
Yeah, and so, and I love...
That's him back. That's as good as any movie he's ever done.
Yeah, and that was cool when because I love... I wasn't, you know, I had friends who were like, oh, it's too sappy, like it's just an easy fantasy, you know, and I'm like, well, but it's a movie. It's beautiful. It comes together, and
but that whole idea of everybody is romanticizing some period in their past, and then you get in that period, and those people were romanticizing, you know.
And the funny thing is, he has a stand-up bit. Like Woody has like the stand-up comedy tapes, you know, from 1968.
Oh yeah,
and that's one of the full 4-minute bits is like what Hemingway would say to him, and Ezra Pound. Like he had a dream about all this stuff.
That came out of one of his.
Of
bits.
course, yeah.
I'm not that well versed in his stand-up stuff. I've seen bits and pieces. Remember as a kid, one of his jokes that stuck with me, which I stole in high school. You know who I feel sorry for? Bisexual people. I mean, seriously, can you imagine wanting to fuck everybody you meet? The size of your black book alone.
Well, the thing that was funny to me was, did you see Wild Man Blues? The one about, it's a documentary about him. He plays in that New Orleans jazz.
It's the documentary about his jazz band.
Yeah.
No, I haven't.
You got to see that
because he did that jazz movie with Sean Penn. Wasn't that Woody? Didn't he do one with Sean playing a jazz?
Oh, I don't know.
Musician? But I know he's into ragtime.
Well, he plays the clarinet. He used to hire jazz guys to come over to his house when he was 12 and teach him stuff. So he still loves playing the clarinet. So this Wild Man Blues movie is his sister produced it. That's the only way you get this close to him. So they follow him to all these places. Oh, and so one of the because I'm like, well, I want to see if he's just really that funny still, you know. And so they show this one scene, the guy who was playing the upright bass, you know, he's got this huge thing and he's lugging around. And Woody's just standing there, and he's not really paying attention to anything. He's like, you would have thought when his parents, you know, told him when he was a kid, you know, about flute. And it was just like an honest moment. It was like, that's Woody Allen. That's what everyone of my friends was trying to imitate. And, you know.
I got a buzz last fall. I actually think it's the movie Dice, or the role that Dice is playing.
Oh, for the new one, yeah.
Yeah, I got a call about that. My agent. And he said, they're interested in you for this Woody thing. He said, they don't want to see Deadwood. They don't want to show Woody Deadwood because he doesn't want a time period thing. So he said, cut down your reel to 3 comic scenes. So I called and he said, you may be going up to San Francisco to meet with him. My manager handles Viggo Mortensen. She's been with Viggo for years. Viggo's has been with him a couple times. He's never done the films. But Lynn told me, she goes, if you go, you won't be reading. Because you'll be sitting in a room. One time he came in, he never even spoke. He just came and he sat in the room for a little bit, looked at Viggo, and left. So you don't read. You're in the space with him.
Yeah.
And when he works, his great films are as good as it gets.
Yeah.
And there were some of the films when he got in his German expressionistic movies. A couple of those are like, wow.
Yeah, yeah.
But the guy makes a movie a year.
Yeah, nobody's that prolific. It's
but
amazing.
he still turns out a Midnight in Paris.
Yeah,
it would be cool to see him do stand up again.
It would.
If You know.
Yeah, he's. He's. If you watch that documentary, the one, it's Robert Weedy who directs a lot of the Curb Your Enthusiasm stuff. He did the documentary, and he's like a big Marx Brothers fan. So he's like big comedy historian. But this documentary is like 4 hours long, and it's still not enough to like cover the career. It's pretty fascinating. It's pretty cool.
Talking about comedy historian, I just stumbled on one, which I call up Reap, or I may have sent him an email, and I forget that I'm a generation older than John. But Archie Campbell, you ever hear of him? He was a Southern comic.
Oh yeah,
He used to be on Hee Haw.
okay.
But he had this real dry sense of humor, you know, Southern. He used to do these, but they're tongue twisters. But Rendersella, who slopped her dripper, you know, inverting the first letters of one word with the other.
Right.
And that was the funniest thing I'd heard as a kid. He would tell fairy tales like Rendersella, which is the story of Cinderella. And that was his big bit. Well, after a conversation with John, I start doing this research on Southern comedy. You know, I had this idea of a monologue you could do, like a line of this comic, and how it kind of started and where it led to. Found out Archie Campbell completely stole it.
Oh,
a
yeah?
radio comic in New York, Stoopnagel, who that was his thing. I found a book on eBay, Snoopnagel's Twisted Tales, and completely stolen. Of course, it was all regional. Like nobody in the South heard fucking radio from New York. But Archie took the whole thing, put his twist.
Yeah, that's crazy.
And you ever hear early Andy Griffith? I mean, Football was one of the first comedy.
Right. Okay, yeah, I've heard that.
But he used to tell Shakespearean stories as a country boy. He'd tell the story about Romeo and Juliet. These teenagers fall in love. But he would tell them as if he's sitting on a hay bale in the barn.
Right.
And that was, part of his shtick.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of the way whenever, the Bill Hicks thing with Dennis Leary. Like, nobody knew that.
Until I read the book, I'd not thought of it. Because I've only got a collection of Best of Hicks. I don't have everything.
Right.
But reading that book, and I saw where so much of Dennis's material.
Yeah. Well, the whole persona is Hicks.
It's Hicks.
Yeah. Just in a marketable fashion.
Yeah.
Just the angry smoker with a leather jacket complaining about things.
Yeah.
Not about religion or
But there
politics.
were some bits, according to that biography, that were almost directly lifted on
Yeah. So
but
that
Hicks
was pretty...
come across to me, the first time I heard him was that bit of, him being in a Denny's down south, because he grew up in the South. But, what are you reading?
Yeah.
But this whole bit of, he come across as better than the witness.
Right. Yeah, it's
like,
always...
I'm smarter. There was that level of acerbic material that I didn't like in him. But then as I listened more, and I discovered...
Well, there's definitely a lot of anger, and it's mostly... It is that thing of like...
that drives so much comedy.
Yeah.
Anger and insecurity.
Yeah, and you try not to make it come from that place, but it's like, well, half the reason you're trying to make people laugh is so you're not failing. You know what I mean? Like the failure part is more...
But how do you do it? That's what blows me away about Colbert. That guy's a fucking genius.
Yeah.
How he plays his satire, that...
Well, it's a character. Like, no, I was like, maybe you can do this for a year, but it's, I mean, I don't even know how many years it is now.
I mean, he's dealing with material. He's dealing with what's going on in our society.
Yeah.
And the way that he plays that character, my God, some of the funniest things I've ever seen was when he was invited to do the presidential dinner.
Yeah.
And he's doing that in front of President Bush.
Right.
And people weren't quite sure, he was so cutting and funny.
Yeah.
But the way he plays that character with people that really do think and behave that way, they agree with him. They agree with what he's saying.
Right.
But it's like there's not a level of cognition that they can quite separate.
Yeah, they don't get it.
Yeah,
I mean, there's
exactly.
a lot of people that are like, oh, yeah, I agree with him. It's like, no,
But
he's making fun of you. Like
but that's what great satire does.
Yeah.
And that's how... Again, I loved Hicks, and I think he was a brilliant mind. Some of his stuff was incredible. But you can do that and not be so...
Yeah. And also remember, he was like, 32 when he died, I think.
Yeah.
So it's like he's still coming into the point of figuring that out, because you do have to figure out that the audience does want to like you. You're not. It's not adversarial all the time. But he would go into these places, and he'd pick on the place, and then already know it's not going to go well and just slug it out, you know what I mean? And I wouldn't want to be in that atmosphere either, you know? Like, you got to be in a place where you think you can create, and you don't want to be preaching to the choir, but at least be in a place where, they'll listen to you. If they agree with you or you come up with a good point about it, they'll acknowledge it, but you don't want a place where it's like, oh, everything he says is funny, you know?
Mm-hmm.
You don't want to get to that point either.
But he's talking about him. I've intrigued with the idea of people. There's my roommate in grad school. His brother died young of cancer. Lived life. He wanted to get married. He fell in love with this girl at 13 years old. Old Italian family. They would not allow the kids to see one another. Mm-hmm. At 16, they ran away and got married. And, you know, had their children when they were like 18. Like this, desperate to live a full life. And Bobby died in his mid-30s. I've been wondering if that was some people with like Hicks, that anger, if there was some part of him that knew this is going to be a short ride. That kind of fueled.
Yeah, like, I don't have time for this. I
don't have time for this menial bullshit.
Yeah.
And being angry, because, I mean, anger infused everything.
Yeah.
There's no doubt the guy was brilliant.
Well, I mean,
there at the end, like, we were talking about Carlin got fucking acerbic as hell.
Mm-hmm.
But of course, I worshiped George at that point.
Yeah. So. Well, you just kind of go in and out with his moods. That was the great thing. It was almost like, I mean, him and Woody Allen. That was the thing. You're going to hear something from them almost every year. Mm-hmm. You might not like it. You might not like the next one more. But it's like, you know, they're always creating, and they're always going to bring something new.
Yeah,
and that's
it's like I've heard Louis C.K. every year,
mm-hmm.
a whole new show.
Yeah,
you know, it's like, how do you do that? You go see Leonard Skinner play, you know they're going to fucking do Freebird.
Right.
You know, and when you got something that works and the audience expecting that, mm-hmm. that's the key to it. Is still keeping your audience involved and listening to what you have to say, without having to repeat yourself. You know,
right? Well, that's the thing. Is like, I think it's going to get to a point where either has to just concentrate on the stand-up or do all these other things. Yeah. He can't continue at the pace that he's doing. But now he is like fully.
I don't know. He's fucking doing it.
Well, that's what I mean. So it's
funny.
Like, yeah. And I mean, you can list on one hand the amount of comedians that have had 3 great hour specials. Yeah. I mean, and he's one of them now. So it's like, how much longer can you do? It's like, you know, it's like the Tiger Woods thing. 10 years ago, everyone's like, well, why would he not keep winning? Well, something might happen. You know, a little burnout or something comes in the road. But
you look at from Delirious to Raw.
Mm-hmm.
Or you look at Pryor's. You know, he peaked at Wanted Live, that concert down in Long Beach.
Oh yeah,
that was one of the funniest things I'd ever seen.
And that's one of my favorite things because he's got Patti LaBelle opening for him, and then the concert. Because did that show in theaters, or was that the point of it?
I saw it on HBO. HBO was a new thing, and my buddy Pig, the funniest man, the Pig, him, he lived in town in a trailer park, Fox Meadows, B00 trailer, and they had HBO.
Yeah.
And that was where I first saw Wanted Live, because, I mean, I knew, but you wouldn't see Carlin on TV at this point. We just had his records.
Right.
You know, I got that box set that I think Rhino released of all of his stuff. But that was the first time I'd seen him. Yeah. There's an early film of his that I saw later that's it's humiliating to watch. It's early, right when he started working Blue. But I mean, some of the material is so goddamn dark.
Yeah.
Talking about growing up in a whorehouse and sucking dick.
Oh, right.
And it's like painful, embarrassing to see.
Yeah, I just love, and speaking of that, and not that Louis was ripping this off at any point, but I feel like he was a little influenced by, because I love Louis. He was one of the reasons he was taping Lucky Louie, and that's how I got my first Late Show with Craig Ferguson appearance, was because Louis canceled. So I have him to thank. And I remember I had this moment. I was doing a showcase for like the Aspen Comedy Festival in this was probably 5 or 6 years ago at least, and he was just doing a spot. And he just moved to upstate New York with his wife, or at least bought a house up there. And he's like, and I said, oh, I'm from upstate New York. He goes, oh, is there any clubs there? I was like, oh, there's like a weekend club. It was up near Albany. I was like, oh, they could do like a special event for you or something. Because I was already, you know, I lived in New York, so I already knew he was one of the guys, you know, at least in comedy, everybody knew he was one of the funniest guys. And he's just like, special event for me? Like, he was totally serious about it, just like, no. And it's so great now to see, like, you know, his can fill a theater just about any city. You know what I mean? So, but yeah, he that first Long Beach one, Richard Pryor, he just walks out. There's no announcement or anything. I don't know if you remember this. And so there's one guy that's just taking pictures of him, and Richard Pryor's just like, come on, show's starting. Sit your ass down. Finish your beer.
Oh, at the beginning of the show. Yeah.
He's like, everyone went out smoking. Show's fucking start. Well, what are you taking a picture of? There's like a guy that's just taking pictures like 5 or 6 in a row. He's like, you got all the pictures you need. Sit your ass down.
Thank you much. Good evening. Wait for the people to get from the bathroom. People in there pissing on. Wait, the shit done started. Damn. What you taking my picture for? Who you gonna show it to? They say, I got a picture of Richard Pryor. Who gives a fuck? Sit your ass down. Motherfucker, sit down. You know you ain't got no film in the camera. You just bullshitting, just flashing, ain't nothing flashing. Sit your ugly ass down.
And so that's kind of how Louis', I think the one in Carnegie Hall, how that starts.
Sit down, kill the house lights, let's just start. Let's just start a show. There's no point in screwing around. I'll do all the announcements that you would have heard. Please turn off your cell phones. Don't, I mean, you can take pictures, but turn off the flash. That's stupid, because it's not... You know, like when you're watching the World Series and there's all like that, like your flash is lighting Yankee Stadium. Just leave your flash off. If you have, don't yell out during the show. If you have something you want to say to me, totally, this is what we do. We write it down, and then you go outside in the lobby, and then you go home and you kill yourself. Because that's selfish. This is a rhetorical performance. It's got nothing to do with you. Don't text or Twitter during the show. Just live your life. Don't keep telling people what you're doing. Just because also, it lights up your big dumb face. It lights it up. I see this beautiful sea of darkness with then just one guy. So don't do that. What else? No Jews. I think they said that earlier, but they told me I have to say it. Jews aren't allowed. If you're Jewish, this is a good time to go. If you see somebody kind of Jewy looking, then please tell an usher, and they will. Sir, come on, let's go. Come on, let's go.
I more just kind of knew who he was, paid no attention, and his first HBO thing, the one where he was skewering, sitcoms. Mm-hmm. I just didn't really.
Yeah, that's the Lucky Louie thing.
Yeah, Lucky Louie, and. Because, that was around the time I think we were doing Deadwood. Mm-hmm. But I paid no attention. And then I saw him on, it wasn't Paul Provenza's thing. Who else has had this comic sitting around?
Well, Ricky Gervais had the thing.
Maybe
Gervais. With Chris Rock and Seinfeld.
Yeah. And Louis on it. And he did the bit about rape.
Yeah.
That, like, how do you handle such incredibly out there subjects, still make them funny and still keep them human? And that whole bit he did about rape, just sitting there and dissecting it of how and what made the joke work, and that's when I'm like, oh fuck, this guy's really good.
Yeah.
And that's when I'd go to YouTube and look up shit, And
he made all these short films when they were still like film. Like he used to, all his college money, he would just go to the ATM and pay people. And he's got like 4 or 5 of these short films. He's got a feature film starring Steve Carell, I believe, that's just so out there weird, and it hasn't been sold. It's called Tomorrow Night, I think. And
he shot recently?
No, this is like years ago. He did a feature like when he was just
when Steve was still.
Yeah. And then he directed Pootie Tang. That was the one, and they took it out of his hands because it was so crazy, and they had to like redo the whole thing and do a voiceover and everything. But I think he's one of those guys left to his own devices. He likes going for weird and just going out there.
That was his bit, when he was talking about his bit on rape. I don't condone it. I mean, I understand. You really want to fuck somebody and they don't want to. What are you going to do?
What am I supposed to do? Not fuck her? I don't know if we can end on that, on the rape thing.
Good luck in editing this.
Yeah. Well, this is great talking to you, man. What, is there anything else left that you'd like to do? Anything specific, like projects that you like to do, or just keep doing what you're doing?
Keep doing what, there's things come along you really, really want them. And I've learned not to put all your eggs in one basket. You get kicked in the nuts enough.
Yeah.
You build up some tolerance.
But you seem like a guy that does enjoy stuff when it's coming, though. It's not like, this is...
And there's been things that I've signed on to do that were like, I don't know, how much are they paying?
Mm-hmm.
Look at my checkbook. Okay. And then I've had fun doing them.
Yeah.
And there's been things I've signed on to do, think, this is going to be great.
Mm-hmm.
And then it doesn't. So take it as it comes.
Yeah.
And there's a part of me that would love to attempt stand-up again. Mm-hmm. But that takes some time to get things in line.
But this is the time to do it. You can do the stand-up of the Deadwood. You can do you and Franklin and Tobolowsky. You can get a...
Tobolowsky used to do...
Well, he does like those storytelling shows.
Yeah, he does.
He's a great storyteller.
Stuff.
He's really... Did you ever see that documentary on him, the birthday party?
Mm-mm.
Stephen Tobolowsky's birthday party. It's pretty good. Yeah.
No, I'll have to look for it.
It's just him... like a bunch of his friends coming over and him telling like their favorite stories that he always tells them, and that's kind of more up my line. It's just a storyteller. Yeah,
been through a lot of funny shit in showbiz.
Yeah,
but anyway, maybe one day.
Well, but I mean, it was, as a fan of your work, it was great to meet you, and it's cool to see all the stuff that you're doing, and hopefully we'll get to work on something. I got to get more famous and get you involved.
Making shorts?
Yeah, I'll do shorts. We'll get you in a single camera. We got to get my own sitcom first, and we'll do the Eastbound and Down. We'll do it about basketball though, and we'll get you you can play basketball coach, right? Murray State,
of course.
Yeah. Southern racist basketball coach. We can or retarded basketball coach.
There you go.
That's Calipari. No, I'm just kidding.
Hey, no. We're not going to win the
you.
championship this year. We might make the NCAA, meaning Kentucky.
So wait, you're rooting for both of them?
Growing up, we had no professional sports teams in Kentucky.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody worshipped the Wildcats.
Okay.
They were essentially our pro team. So, yeah, growing up, and then they won the championship in 78.
Mm-hmm.
That was right around the time I started really watching. So, yeah, we were all Wildcat fans.
Yeah.
If it boiled down to Murray playing Kentucky, I'd be rooting for the Racers.
Yeah, of course.
And, and last year was a Cinderella season for them. And my mom, she never... everybody in town, they were sold out.
Mm-hmm.
So I got my mom tickets to one game. And my mother, she goes, well, just my luck, the one game they lose is the one I'm at. But boy, I had fun. That was so much. I'd forgotten how exciting that was. So I know people.
Oh, that's awesome.
And I got her season tickets.
Oh,
so
okay.
She has center court season tickets that she had knee replacements, so she don't want to walk a lot of stairs.
Yeah.
So she's on the top row there in that first section.
Right.
So... she loves her Racers.
Hey, well, you do too. Hopefully they're doing pretty well this year, right?
What is the record? I think we've lost 3, maybe 3, I think.
Mm-hmm.
But Saturday was exciting as could be. It was an overtime.
Yeah,
Austin Peay.
But they set the precedent. They're like Gonzaga now. It's like everyone knows they can perform in the tournament.
Yeah.
So if they're on the border now,
was it Auburn we beat early on? But that's the problem with schools like that. And Shane was saying this with. They're good enough that the really big schools are afraid to schedule them.
Yeah, that's true.
Because they might lose.
Mm-hmm.
But they're not big enough to be a real TV draw.
Right.
They're kind of in that flux period, But Gonzaga stuck it out long enough. And,
well, that's you make a name for yourself in the tournament. And then, there's, like Duke, they're not afraid to play good small teams early on in the season. They like to test stuff. So... you get to get involved in some of those, tournaments that you get to play somebody big, knock somebody off, and then...
Well, now, hopefully with Coach Promise said he'll stay there. He's my mom's neighbor.
Oh, yeah?
Up the street. Coach Kennedy lived right behind her.
Yeah.
Of course, he went to Texas A&M. You know, and he's had health problems. I don't know exactly what's going on at the moment. But Promise said he'll stay there. He loves living there.
Yeah.
And, of course, everybody was trying to get him last season. So, you know, if you keep a coach there that's going to
develop it.
Sign. See, that's also the thing at Murray. All the great in-state kids usually go to Kentucky, or that's where they want to go.
Right,
or go to Louisville. So Murray was always like the third-tiered team for anybody locally. And it was mostly JUCO transfers and stuff that they could get into the program. Or guys that were such trouble, you know, that their police record was more impressive than their academic record.
Right.
But now with you know, success breeds success. So hopefully they'll keep on keeping on. Yeah, if they play the Wildcats straight up, I'll root for the race.
And that's what I mean. They get in the Final Four. You know how, like, they show one of the Judds for Kentucky. They'll show you in the audience.
Well, they have last year in the big fathead craze. You know, Warren was one of their main fatheads.
Oh, really?
Behind, you know. But that was very 2012. This is 2013.
Well, cool, man. Well, thanks so much for talking to me. And I know we have your great playhouse here. I know you're going to do some exercises on the pole here.
That wouldn't be me.
You had this
I'll play
installed.
the guitar. I'll sing you a silly song while you pack up.
All right, cool. Well, thanks so much, Earl. All right, cool. So there it was. Hope you guys enjoyed that two-part podcast with W Earl Brown. Hopefully I'll get to work with Earl. I have an idea for a TV show involving him. So hopefully I'll get to work with Earl sometime in the future. He's a super talented guy. Fun to chat with, fun to work with. And hope you guys enjoyed all the Deadwood talk and all the talk about working in movies and producing and writing. And I just found him super interesting. And support Murray State, I guess, right? He must be their biggest fan. So I hope you guys enjoyed that episode. Make sure you go to alupodcast.com. Tell your friends about it. Subscribe to the episodes. The more downloads, the better. It really helps out a lot. So thank you guys so much. And, hope you listen to the next episode. We got Larry Miller. We got a ton of great guests coming up. We also have Stephen Tobolowsky coming up, another cast member of the Deadwood show. So thanks again for listening. And hopefully you'll listen to another episode soon.
Toughest man that is alive.